Hi, I'm Keith.
And I'm Aaron.
And this is Destination Whiskey.
On Destination in Reno, Nevada.
And we're visiting High Mark Distillery on St. Patrick's Day.
We are here with Felicia Keith-Jones. We are about to taste their award-winning Old Fashioned.
Oh,
there we go.
Nice.
Outstanding, yeah.
Very nice. So Aaron and I are going to try this for the first
You
time.
gonna try it? Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Man, the tangerine, it's different. I like it.
Wow. That is really good. Now, you might have heard me say before in one of our other videos, I'm not a sweet drinker, and usually Old Fashions are very sweet. This is not.
Sweet. There's no sweet.
It is awesome.
Well, the goal is to always let the bourbon go ahead and be the star to shine a bit, and then you just enhance it with a little touch of something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I watched you make it. I was like, ooh, I like that. I like that pour. And then I said, not a whole lot of stuff in there. This is outstanding.
And it's all about toasting that orange peel. So you've got to have some flame to release the oils that are in the orange, and then it just marries itself really well to the cocktail. Yeah.
And something that surprised me was you put a splash of amaretto in it.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Not much, just a little.
We always say it's just a little kiss.
Just a little
of the
kiss.
amaretto, because we make amaretto. And then that's just amaretto is almonds and vanilla beans, and then we're making the rum as well. So that's sugarcane and molasses, and we get both of those ingredients brought in from Hawaii on the Big Island. So,
Oh, nice.
Outstanding.
And why don't you tell us about the fact that you're one of 8 female master distillers in the country?
That is correct. So through DISCUS, they've got a ranking, and DISCUS is Distilled Institute of Spirits United States, and so that's kind of the regulator for all of the rules and regulations for the United States, and that's out of Washington D.C. And so that's where you're getting the ages for the barrels. That's one of the old regulators that would say for the 53-gallon barrels, it has to be 4 years old before we can bring it out, and then on down in size with the barrels would be the younger ages. And so a 5-gallon barrel that you'll see on the tables, or the one that you guys are doing today, the 2-liter barrel, that only takes 3 months to be a fully registered and certified bourbon. And so those are called tester barrels, and we use those like tools all the time, and I'll explain that later.
Oh, cool.
But that makes it so that, here's one right here. This is what you guys will be filling here in just a little bit. And they look like the cutest little drinking buddies, but what they really are is we're trying to get a good read. So say you made a really nice moonshine and off of the stills. You and I were distilling today, and here came your moonshine. And moonshine is just baby bourbon. And so anyway, then you said, hey, I think we've got something. And so you said, let's go ahead and pour that in a barrel, because what's going on is we're changing it completely. Here's the char coming out of the barrel.
All right.
And that's a federal law that we have to have it charred on the inside, because that sanitizes the barrel. Because back in the day, they would use barrels for everything. That's why we have the Cracker Barrel restaurant. They would throw crackers in there, and then those would, go rancid, and they dump those out. And then they'd throw milk in there for meals, and, after they milked the cows, like, that's a lot of bacteria. And then they're drinking water out of it, just terrible. And so the federal law for a bourbon, which is, you guys may or may not already know this, but bourbon is the only word in the American language that we actually own as a country. We own one word, and it is bourbon, and that is how important bourbon is to our country. And so anyway, with those, with that being the designation, they decided, what kind of wood do we have to use?
Oak.
American oak.
American white oak.
American white
and
oak.
we cannot cut corners and bring that in from Canada. We can't bring it from Mexico. It has to be from American groves of trees and harvested by Americans. And they track that. So we know where our wood's coming from. And right now ours is coming from Virginia, West Virginia, Minnesota. That's where the barrel mill is that we get ours from. And then Texas. And then Oregon. And so that's where our wood's coming from right now. And then other distilleries have other woods that they're bringing in. That just happens to be where our barrel mill is collecting their wood. And so anyway, then it also has to be charred on the inside, and that's what that was. That was to protect anyone that was drinking it, because, you made a good moonshine. Yes, it's alcohol. It's probably going to kill all germs, but man, somebody had nasty crackers in there.
Something in there,
So you would want a new barrel every single time, and charred, because this was nature just a minute ago. This was a tree trunk. That's where we get all of our barrels, just the trunks. And so this wood might have had like what if it had a tree worm in it, or a, sap, and, knot holes and everything else. So once you char that, you've got a pristine vessel to put it in. Then you would be pouring yours in, and then we would only have to wait 3 months to go ahead and see. Correct. To see, now, we knew this tasted good. You did a good job, but now does it taste good with char on it? Because it might not be worth a darn. Or it's delightful, and then we say, well done. Now we're going to go ahead and put this into the larger barrels and get it into production. So this is the test.
So do you always test before you go into the 53 or 55?
53, and I'm glad you asked that, because 55 was another tax bracket. And so in America, they said, no way, we're going 53, so we don't have to pay to that next level. So that historically, that's why it is.
All right.
Yeah. But anyway, you would go ahead, and this would be a finished product, and then it truly is a bourbon, so you could go ahead and enjoy it. If we're using a new recipe, right now this is 100% sweet corn. And then say you decided we're going to use sweet corn at 80%, and we want 18% rye and 12% barley. That's almost Pappy Van Winkle, by the way. So, anyway, say that was your next one that you made, and then we would test it out again to make sure that it's going to taste good off of the wood. Because what you don't want is to put hundreds of barrels down, realize, actually, this has a funky finish on the back end, and none of us like it. Make that mistake here with a tiny bit. You could offload this on the neighbors, like they're still going to drink it. And if you have barrel after barrel, that's a hard sell. You're going to lose money.
Right.
So you would always test it. And who in the world made that a rule, that we have to use American white oak each time? Do you know?
I don't.
Well, when this was becoming a federal law and it was going through Congress, then there were two lobbyists that they had the most money in the United States. It was alcohol back then, and then it was the timber industry. And so they said, we want in on this because they owned all of the American white oak groves. And so to this day, we still have to go ahead and buy the American white oak. And kind of thank goodness, because what if they had owned all the pine trees? I mean, this would taste nasty.
It would.
So it tastes like pine salt. So yeah, so they did us a solid. And it's waterproof. Like when ships used to go down, they could tell where the ship went down. Poor, little people, they were gone. The ship had sunk, but the barrels would be bobbing on top, so they knew that it was right around that area. If they just held onto a barrel, they would have lived. So yeah, so barrels are very watertight.
And had something to drink.
Yeah, you wouldn't have died of thirst either. Yeah. So anyway, these have a huge importance to us, and so does the char. And then of course the grain. What percentage of corn do you have to have in there?
51.
51. Now, is it okay if you do 50?
No.
Sure, but
sure,
you
you
just
just can't
knocked
call it
yourself
bourbon.
to a whiskey. Yep.
Yeah,
So
it
you're a
can't be
much
bourbon.
lower level.
Can't be bourbon,
Yeah,
right.
that's exactly right. And so ours happens to be 100%, so you could start at the 51, and then we chose to go ahead and see, could we do it and bring out some beautiful flavor out of these barrels. And we only use Nevada sweet corn, and it's delicious here. Now, that might not work in every state, because other states might not have this really, really naturally sweet sugar content coming from their corn. We do happen to have that here. If you didn't have that, then you might want to go ahead and add other grains to bring more flavor through. Or you might want to add the other grains because you're not willing to wait on your barrels. There's no such thing as a bad bourbon. You just might be bringing it out too green, too young.
Okay.
And so let it age. But if you were a huge distillery and you were on a time clock because you had 500 investors that were waiting for a paycheck, 4 years and a day they want paid. So it wouldn't matter if it was ready. And I think sometimes that's why distilleries go ahead and blend, because they don't have the finest flavor coming through at that moment. They've got to get something out the door, and so they do. Or you could go ahead and wait years to see, this is nature, so it doesn't care that you and I want to drink on day 4, 4 years. It's going to take its own sweet dear time, and hopefully we, have something nice after a while. But Yeah, that's why barrels have different ages.
Okay.
And it'll be like a 5-year-old that you're tasting, and then like if you and I were at a tasting today, so it might be a 5-year-old or it might be an 8-year-old. Now you think, where'd 6 and 7 go? Were they better? Did they already sell those out? No, they just weren't worth a darn yet. So they did a barrel thief, and we tasted it, and we said, not today.
Not yet.
And then push that barrel back and walk on by. Let it age. Yeah.
Nice.
And I assume that you have a well thought out way of knowing how long the barrel has been back there.
We do, and actually all of ours are. So back in the olden days, you would just do a barrel pick, and so it'd be your job and my job that day to go through, pound out the bung, and then go ahead and pull some out. And I'm doing this because that would be a barrel thief.
Yeah.
And you've got the liquid in there, and then we would both sample it and say yes or no. Now what we have is those are all on the computer, and so we actually have a QR code on each one of the barrels, and it's tracking it. So it'll do an alarm for us when we know that it has hit its 4-year mark. And then start tasting it, because it might be there, might not. But record what you're tasting, and then kind of give it a good idea of this went to the praline side, we like that, or maybe it's heavier on the oak, because different casinos and restaurants and hotels, grocery store chains, they'll come in with a clipboard and they're wanting to do a barrel pick. And so say you were an executive from one of the hotels and you said, we have a following of folks that love to have a cigar with it. We would like something a little heavier on the oak. Now they would need that because they compromise their taste buds when they lit up. So they can't taste what everybody else can taste at like a char 3. They might need a heavier barrel or a double oak. And so, anyway, then that's what you would be looking for. So you would have your own idea of what you wanted, and we would hold those in a category, like an area for you, and those would just be for you. And that's kind of how it goes. But it's all based off of time, and then you're moving them around the different barrel houses, like the one that I'll let you guys see in just a little bit. That's called our nursery. So those are really young barrels, they're babies, and they need a different humidity and temperature. And then lots of states have tons of humidity. You guys do in Texas, and then we're dry as a bone up here. So in Nevada, we're desert, so we have to go ahead and add in some of the humidity, even in the winter, because we will crack our barrels if we don't. We get down to 3% humidity, so that'll crack a guitar open, and same wood, And so for us, that's money out the door. That's angel share that's evaporating way too fast, and that's liquid gold.
So you mentioned water and how dry it is here. So what's the Kentucky, they always talk about the limestone caves and all of that. So what's in it? What's the water here? The water source
Well, I hate to brag, but
Please do.
we have Lake Tahoe, and so that's why you'll see most of the distilleries right up here in northern Nevada, never down by Vegas, because they always experience droughts down there. And then here in Reno, we're right next to Lake Tahoe, and that is beautiful, pristine ice melt, and it's one of the cleanest lakes in the United States. In fact, they haven't even figured out how deep that thing is yet, even off of sonar. And so we don't know how deep it is, but it sure is nice water. And that then filters through all of the rocks down here in the valley, because Tahoe's right up on top of us. Down here in the valley, we're going through 3 levels of limestone. And so, and then why is limestone so important? It's the ultimate purifier. And so our water's already clean when it's coming in, and then it has the right minerals that we're looking for flavor. And then when people say, water's not that important, if you've ever had sulfur water, it is. Like, there's some nasty water out there. And you have to watch out for, if you're using nature, arsenic pockets, those can be in nature. And too much copper, that can change the flavor. And so you're wanting to make sure that it's tested and you know where your water's coming from. But we do use spring water here. And so I'll drink tap water, but I would never let my barrel have it. Because we have clean water, but I still bring that in because I want just the perfect match between what that grain was grown in. So they're flooding our fields here, so that's flood irrigation. And so we know what water was on there, and that grain grew with that. And so we want to match it with the water that we're doing with the distilling, rather than making it contradict.
I think that's the first time that I've heard that.
Oh, okay.
That, the water source, and then also the grain being grown in that same water source.
Yeah, and then they get very particular. If you guys head over to Scotland or Ireland, oftentimes if they say, how are you going to drink it? and you say, oh, I like a little splash of water, they'll say, I may last, for me, I may last, and they'll come back with a little water that they want you to pour in there. They don't want you to use anything else because that was the water that complemented the distilling process. So, yeah.
Now I'm going to switch gears on you.
Okay.
You told us earlier that you're originally from Alaska, but you made the trek down here to Reno. What was that?
Why?
Yeah. Because you were doing whiskeys or bourbons. Were you doing that in Alaska?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I actually grew up on a ranch in Colorado and then was recruited up there on a sports scholarship. So that was gymnastics.
Okay.
And then stunt cheerleading, all the weird things. But yeah, you'd think hockey up there. But yeah, because the oil companies are paying for athletes to come on up.
Okay.
And so anyway, once I was up there, I realized that, there were so many doors that were wide open of industries that have never been done. And when I graduated from college, I was a teacher, and they push you out to the bush first, and so that means no roads connecting anywhere. You're using either boats or you're using planes, and that led to me working at aviation companies. And so, as a bush pilot, you're flying all over the place with all the pilots and opening up that area rather than our roads. We don't have any roads going anywhere, and so we have 3 main highways, and then that's it. Everything else is bush, and so you're always using the planes back and forth, and that led to me meeting the Shanahan family out of Ireland, and they were 4th generation distillers, and so they said, would you ever consider coming over to Ireland and learning to distill? And that's how all of this happened. And so they were able to go ahead and teach me all that they could in Ireland. So we were in Ardra, County Donegal is where their home area was, and it's the northernmost county in Ireland, and then they had the right connections to go ahead and get me into Bushmills, and so that was my formal training. And then coming back to Alaska, I was like, absolutely, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And so I bought a ranch, and then it had a brand new airplane hangar on it. So that was the first conversion of a distillery up there. And then realized, oh man, being first is cool, but you forget a few things. Like, where are we getting our grain? We don't grow grain in Alaska. So then are we bringing it in from Canada? Well, that's awfully hard because, customs for international. And then what was next? Maybe Washington State? And then the truth is that the gentleman that put me on to Nevada grain was George Rax, the gentleman that started the Mob Museum down in Las Vegas, and then it has a speakeasy. Ooh, speakeasy. And so anyway, he was distilling before it was even legal in Nevada. He was allowed to as a thing of interest, a new industry for Nevada. And he said, we have the most beautiful grains in Nevada, like all the most beautiful grains come from Nevada. And I was like, George, nobody says that. They didn't need to use it for anything except for cattle back then. And so I pioneered the second oldest distillery in Alaska's history, and I missed it by 10 days, but I was the one that changed House Bill 309 so we could have it, legislation would change it, allow us to have distilleries. And so I changed it up there, and then had to bring all of my grain in from Winnemucca, Nevada.
Okay.
And so that was where all of our original grains came from, and we were a cruise ship stop. And so that was, heavy traffic with folks during the summers, and then dead in the winter. And so you're up and down all the time. And just as we would get all the grain up there, make the spirits, and then have them ready for all the tourists would say, can you go ahead and bubble wrap this and send it home? It was coming right back down here. We're like, what are we doing? Why don't we go where the grain is? And so anyway, then looked into Lake Tahoe here area and Reno, and we have family here as well. And so decided, why don't we come full circle to where the grain is, and then just keep the distilling the spirits that are shipped up to Alaska. We have 210 locations up there that still purchase during summers. And so
Okay.
and so anyway, that's how it all came to be for us to be located in Reno, was to get by the grain and have beautiful water as well.
It's very interesting and a lot of good information. Appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Oh, you're sure welcome. Yeah.
And for those of you viewing on this right now and haven't seen what we're getting ready to do, we're getting ready to do that.
Ta-da.
We're going to make one of those, Aaron and I, and then in about 4 months, you say it takes to age?
3 start testing it.
So about
and
3 to 4 months.
You just can't go younger.
3 to 4 months, we're going to crack it open and give it a taste, and we'll let you know what we think. So
yeah, and this is their baby. So I guarantee this. You will love on your baby so much. And then if you let anybody else have a sip and they're like, it's okay. You're like, how dare you? And they will never get to have some of your baby again.
You know what I do to people like that?
What's that?
I said, let me show you something. I get them real close to my front door, and I push them out, and I lock the door behind them. So we don't have that problem.
It's a little one-way trip
That's
for them,
right.
huh? Yep, exactly. But the fun with this, you guys, is that you're truly customizing it to just your taste buds.
Right.
So even though there's a group here today, you're dialing it in with your taste buds. Yeah.
They don't get. They don't get.
They
a
don't
choice.
get to vote.
Just us.
No.
Just the two of you.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you'll realize which grains you really do prefer and which ones you might not want in there at all, or you want a combo of the grains, because we're going to give you some samples of how that tastes once it's aged. There's no such thing as taking it when it's young and green and then saying this is going to be great. You know, like it's so different from the old brand. So these are the same. The only difference here is that barrel and the aging.
Really, these two.
Those are exactly the same.
Exact-
90 proof, 100% sweet corn, brought from the same fields.
Interesting.
And then this is what made all
Just
the
the aging.
difference. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. All right, thanks.